Hello, friends, and welcome to the Point, the home services podcast that focuses on marketing and operational solutions to help you get better. Because if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. Now, let's cut through the bullshit and get to the point.
What's up, everybody? We've got my man, Tersh Blissett, on the podcast today. I'm super stoked to have him on here. What's always interesting, Tall Paul, since I have you on here, my co-host, Mr. Tall Paul Redmond. Tall Paul, why don't you start by how you're doing today? Because I really want to know, with that flannel shirt on, I know it's plaid, but you tell me, you look like you're feeling good today. Like, why don't you say what's up to our listeners and just share some of that, that ear-to-ear grin you got going on. I want to feel some energy out of you, bro.
Let me back you up a little bit. This is not just a plaid shirt. This is actually my favorite plaid shirt. And if you go back to Rhino's Instagram right now and you scroll all the way back to the first Instagram post of Rhino official, you'll see me wearing this shirt at the Digital Summit, because this is my favorite shirt. This makes me feel good. This is what I wear when I want to feel like $1 million. And I know they're not a sponsor of ours, but Gap, the tall section in Gap, you can pick up one of these bad boys. So this is my favorite shirt, and it's not flannel, it's plaid, but thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Well, no problem. I mean, you look like you're just in a really good mood today. If I could give you one piece of advice, you might just want to hit that collar with a little starch.
A little floppy collar.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get to it. Pipe down, Redmond. You're getting a lot of control now. Okay. All right. I want to get to it because I got to introduce my man Tersh on the podcast today. Tersh, what's up, brother?
What's up, guys? How are y'all?
Good, my man. Well, I'm gonna tee this thing up real quick because I want our listeners to know who you are, because you're not just the pride of Effingham County High School. The Fighting Rebels. Is that what it was, right?
Good Rebels.
Fighting Rebels.
Yep.
Which is in what? South Georgia. That's where you're kind of from, South Georgia, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Savannah area.
One of those Georgia gentlemen. But Tersh and I met at originally at a CEO Warrior event up in Jersey, and which is a group he's been a part of, which you're also a mentor within that group, right?
I am. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So, and a lot of it comes from your history in the trades and like the things you've accomplished in the trades. Well, the purpose of this podcast is to touch on that, but you do it in such a unique way, which is what has intrigued me, because you have this like remote service model. So the name of this episode being, can a remote service company really work? I think you've proven that it can. So I've never had this come up before until you and I talked about it. So it's always kind of had my wheels spinning, because we work with so many contractors across the United States and Canada, and I don't know of one of them that's a remote company. So
well, cool.
So I can't wait to dig into this and have our listeners. I mean, you never know, dude. Like, you might set a trend here, bro. Like, I don't know what can come from it, but I've got my feelings on it from the little amount that I know on how it actually functions. But I cannot wait to dig into this with you. So what I want to do to tee this thing up and is just to have you share a little bit of your background and your history and kind of your come up. And I'm always interested to hear how everybody gets into the trades, because I feel like more often than not, a lot of people didn't mean to get into it, and now here you are, kind of like myself. Like, I had no interest. It wasn't even on my radar to get into this super sexy industry called heating and air conditioning and plumbing and electrical. But I'll be damned if I'm not here 12 years later. So, dude, if you would share the story on how you got into the trades and a little bit of your history, just so our listeners kind of have an idea of why, you're on this podcast. Fire away, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, I appreciate y'all having me on the show. I'm super honored, totally. And to follow up some of the guys that have already been on the show, that's some big shoes to fill.
You got your work cut out for you, brother, but you got it.
Yeah.
No pressure.
No pressure, right. So I graduated high school in 2002, but I joined the military in December of 2001. So right after 9/11, I actually joined the Air Force. I was a TAC-P, and so we called in airstrikes. And so it was life expectancy typically, well, back when I was in, it was about 18 months for that career field.
And you thought that sounded like a good idea?
Oh, it sounded like an amazing idea, especially since I only missed 3 questions on the entire ASVAB. So I should have been sitting in an office somewhere, but instead, I don't know. I signed up for the worst career field ever. I mean, it's not the worst. It's just the least likely to survive in the Air Force. Anyway.
Now, so you're married to Julie, but were you and Julie together then?
No. So she's from Columbus, Ohio, and we actually met.
OH.
Yeah. She went to the Ohio State University, but she was down in Savanah training for the military. She's in the Air Force. She's in the Guards still, and she's been there for 12 years. She's a captain, and she was training in Savannah. We met at a bar one night, and it was like my last time going to that place, her last day of the deployment, and then 6 months later we were married. But yeah, crazy how that happens. And she's an integral part of the business, the entire business process also with us. I mean, she really makes shit happen for sure. But anyways, I got out of the military, did a couple of jobs here and there, did a little bit of schooling, college, went to school for psychology. Then a friend of mine, we were car buddies together. I have lots of cars. We talked about that beforehand. I've always been into Mustangs, and he was just that guy that always had the extra disposable income. And to have cars, like you're probably better off having a drug habit than having cars. You'll have more money left over.
So did you have hydraulics on any of these cars? Because when I hear 2004, 5 extra money, I'm thinking switches.
Air ride.
Nice.
Yes, I had an S10 laying body on 22s, so the tires would come out of the hood when it would lay on the ground. But anyways, that's back in the youth days. But yeah, so he had extra money, and I was like, man, get me a job where you're at. And he was like, I can get you an interview. Getting the job's on you. And I was like, all right, cool. So I got a job there, and it was at a local air conditioning company. First week, they stuck me on installs, and I was like, nope, peace, I'm out. Not doing this the rest of my life. And so, but thankfully, I didn't leave. And they were, within 2 years, I became GM of that company. And that was in 2000 and I joined up with them in 2005. I could have these dates off just a little bit, but 2005-ish, I joined up with them. 2007, I was GM, and then from 2007 for the next 5 years, I was in that company, and we went from 1.1 to 8 million through the middle of the recession.
Damn. And
we did that with Desco, which is the old Field Edge back way back before that. We were doing it on stones and hammers and chisels. Yeah. I mean, it was F1, F2 everywhere you went, and so I created Excel spreadsheets and modified Excel spreadsheets to where we could have KPIs that came in every single day. So the morning of, I knew. So by 10 a.m., I knew our net profit from the previous day. And so we just watched those metrics all day, every day. The service department, when I got there, was a loss leader. And it's that way in a lot of HVAC companies. The service department loses money and the install department makes money. Well, by the time I left, the service department was making enough money to cover the entire overhead for the entire company. So just the service department was. And that was my goal before leaving, was making sure that happened. And then I left, started another company, and I started it in 14-ish. And that company, we were growing between 90 and 120% year over year. And in 2017, I started my podcast, and listeners were like, hey, like, how the hell are you doing that? Like, first off, how'd you start your company? Then how did you get that profit and numbers and stuff? I was like, you know what? I'm a glutton for punishment. Let's start another company. So,
let's do it again and
let's
again.
Do it all again. So that's what we did. We started another company. Actually, I did one better than starting a company. I bought a company that was way upside down in debt and completely in shambles, and have brought that company back up. And so now we're rebranding as of January 1. So long story short, we're back to making money and we're good.
So today, I know that actually makes sense because Paul and I were just talking about that brand shift prior to the podcast. So you were the COO of Inbound, right?
Icebound.
I'm sorry, geez, Icebound HVAC and Refrigeration, and so that's the one that's making a change, right?
Yeah. So Icebound is swapping over to Service Emperor. So the new name is Service Emperor.
Got it. Okay, cool. Saw the new website. Looks pretty sick.
Yeah,
So,
it needs work, but yeah.
Paul.
So I want to go back to when you were, back to the day after you did install and that 2-year period of time when you worked for the company. What was it during that period of time that put you in a position to be a GM? And then also, you quickly started talking about software. Was software an integral part of your kind of your ownership and the things that have made you successful over the years?
Automate everything.
Yep.
Everything is automated. Guests, when they sign on to my podcast or sign up to be a guest on my podcast, the entire process is automated. I literally send them my link and then I have nothing else to do with the process until I click record. And it's, as y'all can attest, it's a kind of a tedious process, or it can be a very tedious process. So I've automated that. And when I was a service technician, I was very much numbers driven, and I'm thankful that the owner of that company kind of seen that happened. I was paid flat rate, so piecemeal, billable hours, flat rate, however you want to call it. That's how I was paid. And I did something where so I figured out at what number the taxes really hurt me, like where my hours versus taxes payout. I figured out that fine line. It didn't take long, but I figured it out. And as soon as I figured that out, I had them stop paying me at that dollar amount and started giving me vacation pay. And so every single week, I think it was 54 hours. Once I billed out 54 hours, everything else automatically converted to vacation pay. And I did that for about a year, and I had almost 8 months worth of vacation built up.
Nice.
And so, but yeah, that was like the second year. And then whenever that was kind of our negotiation. Whenever I moved into the office, they were like, look, you're training to do a new job. You're an amazing tech. You're our lead tech. You're making the most revenue. You have the least amount of callbacks. I averaged 3% callback. I knew my percentages. Like I watched my own KPIs. They said, we're going to lose a valuable asset. And it's the same thing that I preach to everybody that asks me, like, what kind of pay raise should I be asking for when I move from a service expert to a service manager? I was like, well, if it was me, I'd give you a pay cut because you're no longer you're of no value to me anymore. You were valuable in the van. You're now, you have no idea what you're doing. Not a clue. Not to mention, we're probably going to lose 20%, 30% of our workforce because whenever you go to work for your friend, when your friend becomes your boss, it gets really awkward, really hard. And so if you didn't start that relationship out that way, it's a tough conversation to have. So that was my negotiation. I lost all of that vacation pay because he spent the next year training me and sending me to Seattle to a coach out in Seattle. And I went out there several times, and they really harped numbers with me. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm in heaven now, because I knew there was something out there, but I didn't know what it was. I knew it had to be better than what we had. And we had been paying $60,000, $70,000 a year, or they had been for 5 years previous to me even being there for this coaching organization, but nobody was implementing it. And I was like, so you're telling me that all I have to do is implement everything that y'all are saying and then create, like, there were some things that were like the gaps need to be bridged. Like I didn't know it, but I was very much an automation freak back then. And so it was like, why am I adding information here and I'm adding information here? Yeah. Yes, it was Paul. And
I knew it. I knew it.
Like, it was very much so. It was like, you know what? I'm going to create an Excel spreadsheet that bridges all three of these. So all I have to do is every morning put this information in. And so then, you know, I don't blame them at all. They're very intelligent and they're very smart for what they did. But they took my Excel spreadsheets and they sent it to all of their other people. And they're like, y'all need to start doing this. And I was like, yeah, cool. I've
seen them. I've seen your Excel spreadsheets. So that's how far they got around. And you did an awesome job.
Well, it's one of those things where it was like, I was young. I don't know, 21, 22, something like that. 23 maybe. And it was like, hell yeah. Like, that's my ego. Like, I did that. Like, you don't have to pay me $1. Just tell everybody I did it. Or I don't care. You don't have to tell anybody I did it. Whatever.
Pat on the back. Pat on the back.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so, it was just that was a really cool process. And I am very much like, Gary Vee. I'm very much a wartime leader. And as soon as things got even kiltered out, it was like, ejectocito, I got to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very bored.
The feeling of complacency to me is the worst feeling in the world. Because I was just having this conversation with my wife yesterday, who's also our COO, who really gets nervous when I talk about doing new shit. But it's because I constantly feel like I have to keep going. We had a meeting in actually yesterday with a customer of ours in Phoenix, Arizona, a pretty big heating and air conditioning contractor, plumbing contractor. And they were with their previous internet marketing company for like 7 years. And they were feeling complacent. I mean, and like something needed to change. And even though, a lot of times, you could have a great relationship with any marketing company and things are going well, but you need something different. You need to try to switch it up and change it up. So complacency is something that I remember, and Gary said this loud and clear to us. I mean, from the beginning is if you feel that, you should be uncomfortable. Like, you need to be doing something different, keep trying new stuff. And so thankfully I've, not just willy-nilly, like throwing shit against the wall and seeing if it sticks. Like, you want to put a plan in place, but you got to keep moving forward. In an industry like yours, and really even mine, Tersh, is there's so many of us. How are we realistically differentiating ourselves from the next guy? Because there's all the cliche shit that you can talk about that you can do, like, oh, we give better customer service, but what are you legit doing? Like, don't talk about it. Actually do something with it and move forward. So you being complacent is like the enemy of, I think, major success.
I agree with that 100%. And a lot of times I get asked, because of the podcast, they'll ask me, at what point do you just get to like chill and it just goes on cruise control? And I said, I fucking hope it never does.
Right.
Like, if it does, I'm going to probably give the company away, because, I mean, like, my other company, I still own it. Most people don't even realize that I still own the other company. But it runs pretty much on autopilot. We have the 531. So if I get any fives in that come in the door, I'll go take care of it. I'll handle it. I actually got to go on Friday and handle some shit with them.
Yep.
But it's one of those things where it's like, as soon as it got to autopilot status, like we did like 5 million at 14% net, like it, and I don't touch it. So like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, that's residual income. But it's not fun to me. Like, I have a business partner with that company because he's in construction, and that's how we joined forces together. And he's like, oh yes, this is perfect. Like, I love it at this Cadillac stage, but he's close to retirement. He has 75 rental properties. Like, that's like, he doesn't want to deal with the wartime drama. And I'm like, I gotta find something to occupy my time and give me some more stress.
I'm gonna jump in real quick, because you talked about your 531 strategy, and I don't know that a lot of people know what that is. And so I want to dissect it real quick, because it's actually a really good methodology that you're practicing. And I think what a lot of people are experiencing is, when you started your business, you did not realize you're going to have to hire a firefighting position, but it's inevitable. So give a brief explanation of what your 5-3-1 strategy is.
Okay, so 5-3-1, there's something that prefaces 5-3-1 that I do also, and if someone calls me or reaches out to me with a problem, they must also provide 3 solutions. If you call me and say, "Hey, I got a problem, I can't figure this out," okay,
an employee.
What's the 3 solutions?
An
employee, yeah, team member, not a customer.
Right. They're like, "You give me the solution, man."
Yeah, so a team member, they'll call me and say, "Hey, I can't figure X, Y, and Z out," or "What's the process on this?" And I'll say, "What's the 3 solutions that you've come up with so far?" And they say, "Well, I haven't come up with any." Click. Like, I don't even say, "Come up with more and call me back." I just hang up on them. And they're like,
"Bye,
the
Felicia."
first time it happens, they're like, "Hey, I think we got disconnected." "Yeah, we did." Click. And then they call back again, and then they're like, "What in the world?" I was like, "Don't call me back until you have 3 solutions." And they're like, "Okay." So that does away with 99.9% of the crap calls where they just want to call and chat.
Right.
So then this is where 5-3-1 comes in. If they send me a text message, because that's the absolute best way to get in touch with me, with my team, is through Slack or text message. Most of the times I want Slack, but they'll just preface it with, "Hey, this is a 5, level 5, this is a level 3, or this is a level 1. If it's a level 1, it's pretty much like, "Hey, buddy, how are you? What'd you have for breakfast?" type stuff. If it's a level 3, it's something that I'll handle the same day. I'll take care of it, but it's not like super urgent. I don't need to stop. Like if I got a text message right now in the middle of our interview that says level 3, well, I'd respond after the fact. I would, go let them, hang out with them, call them, after we got off the phone with each other. But if it came across level 5, it's like, "All right, guys, I'm going to have to take a break for 5 minutes. I got to figure out what's going on here. This is a level 5. A guy just wrecked a van, flipped a van, ran over, a little lady on a walker through a crosswalk, like whatever."
We went here.
That's a 5.
We went here.
That's 7. You just invented the 7. Level 7.
Right. This is a PR nightmare. Yeah.
I want to go back. You mentioned your company that was running $5 million in revenue with a 14% net. I think I got those numbers right. Tell us about that company. I think our listeners want to know, what do you mean by having this company that runs and operates profitably that you don't have to touch? Tell us about that.
Oh, that's top secret. No, I'm just kidding.
All right. Next question.
Is this where you just disconnect? This is where he's like, "Okay, click."
Oh, yeah. It's like, "Oh, bye." Like,
New phone. Who dis?
So the biggest thing with that company is, I don't think I said this. I have 2 HVAC companies, electric company and a plumbing company. They're all direct competitors with each other. And I do market research between them all.
In the same market.
Exact same market. One is a brick and mortar, like 100% traditional everything, like white vans with just the wording in the writing on top, the back of it, like legit traditional air conditioning. That's the one that is $5 million.
It's like the white beer can. It just says beer in black on it.
Exactly. I mean, it's just like that, but it's in green and blue.
Perfect.
And the traditional colors, yeah, exactly. Only thing that would have made it better if I did it in red and blue, but there's plumbing too, so we left it green. But that business model is very, very high volume, low margin. So watch every little thing. You don't get new uniforms every year. You don't get new vans every year. We pay cash for, $10,000 vans. You're going to use the cheapest of parts. You're going to catch 12 to 15 service calls a day. Average ticket price is like $125 per average ticket price. Whereas, Icebound, their average ticket price is $875. And then they catch a max of 3 service calls a day with the option for 2 more if the service expert accepts them. But those 2 calls are, the client knows we charge an additional $100. The $100 goes directly to that technician's family because you're taking them away from their family. If you're willing to pay the additional $100 and they agree to catch the call, then we'll come out there tonight. So completely different mindset. Whereas the other company, it's property managers. We have 6,400 properties that we manage with the other company, and we have it set up. We communicate very well with the property managers, so we have the CRM set up so that the property managers can pretty much like self-add based on availability of schedule, and they can put their people in there whenever they want to. And then we have the office people, office girls, and they will keep following up. And, you know, a lot of stuff's in the cloud. It's not like Icebound or Service Emperor where we're 100% paperless, but we did a lot in the cloud.
So because you've made it super clear, you're very analytical and metrics driven. Is this the reason that you were in the beginning thinking like, yeah, I can certainly make a remote company work because I just need to follow these metrics for accountability, and I can follow the metrics to keep track of everything that's going on. Was that like the guide into that, like that thought process of being a remote?
Part of it. The other part of it was, it really pissed me off every time I'd have to pay for a brick and mortar location, knowing dang good and well that I could do everything that I'm doing right here in this office that I have to drive an hour to come to every day from my home or from anywhere with my truck. I could literally do it all, you know? And so that was part of the frustration that I was having to a lot of people. And so it's going to blow people's mind, but I've already got it mapped out. I can do over 10 million without an office. And that includes a warehouse. At the 10 million mark is whenever we're going to start with the warehouses. And I already have it very well mapped out, and I've tried it. And as long as so it relies on vendor relationships, and as long as those relationships stay as great as they are right now, I can do it. And I'll tell you a secret, not many people will do this, but if you're in Savannah, don't do this.
If you're in Savannah, turn this shit off right now.
Hold on. We have clients in Savannah.
I'm just kidding. A lot of people know that they already know that we do this, and they just implement it. And that's like my podcast. Like, people are like, why do you share all your secrets? Like, nobody's going to do this shit.
Right.
Like, you have to do it. I could tell you all day long what I do, but you still have to do it.
Yep.
So we have mini storage units all over town, all over our service area, close to where people's houses are, or service experts' houses are. And it's a fully stocked van. Each one of the mini storage units is a fully stocked van on consignment. So every week they're restocked. And so the guys don't have to go to warehouses. They don't have to go to the supply house.
Supply houses.
There's a mini storage unit right there. They use the inventory management program that is online. It automatically reorders or notifies the vendor that the part was taken out of their warehouse, or it was taken out of the service tech's van, so they know that it's getting ready to be taken out of one of the local warehouses or mini storage units. And so as we add a service expert to another area, we don't have to say now we service 61 miles from the center radius of Savannah. It's like we just morph into their community also, because now we have a mini supply house in their community. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So a service area just kind of like mutates, and it's not a perfect circle anymore. It's kind of like got tentacles sticking out of it. And so you can so we also very well know who our avatar is. And so we can go around people that are not our avatar. And then, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Actually, I want to touch on this avatar piece real quick. And before I even get to that, do you know of anybody else that's doing it the same way as you are?
No, Steve Adario's asked me about it, and so we've sat down and talked a while, and he says that he's going to do it so he can take over Massachusetts, but that's the only person that I know of.
Got it. Yeah, because I had to. I mean, it's been 12 years of me in this industry, and I've never heard of it before, which is what was so intriguing about this, is trying to dig into those details.
Here now.
Oh boy! All right, so.
But how much of that though was you leading the distributor to complying with what's required for your business versus you just taking some program your distributor had and saying this will work?
No. It was 100% me.
Yeah.
And I actually sat down with the programmers from Watsco, and we worked through it. And so now you were with Linux, right? Not Watsco.
Both.
I was, but I'm pretty familiar with Watsco.
Okay, so and now they're offering it for free to all of their people. And so it's called something different at every location, or every branch, but it's basically Stock Pro or something like that. And it's a QR code that you can print out, put it in your van underneath the technician's SWAT, and it's got a max min thing on it, and they scan it with their tablet, and so it automatically keeps track of inventory and replenishment. And it doesn't have to be a Watsco only part. It can come from a different vendor, and we can reorder it, and it will reorder for us through the other vendor.
So early on, I'm going to drop a little. Our paths were kind of somewhat aligned. So before, I'm the CEO of Rhino Strategic Solutions today, but before it was called Rhino, it was called Brickyard Marketing when we first started the company, because I started it in Indianapolis, Indiana, which so I wanted them to know I was local, and the Brickyard is there, which is Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So I think that's where the name Brickyard come from. But also, the Carrier Corporation headquarters is in Indianapolis, Indiana, which is where I started my journey into the HVAC space. At one point, talking about me always trying to think ahead, is we started building apps. I didn't know shit about how to build an app, but I thought, like, when the smartphones were coming out, I'm like, I got to figure out how to make apps work for heating and air conditioning and plumbing contractors. Like, what could I create that would be useful? Like, why would a homeowner want to say, well, why the hell do I want your Icebound app? And so I came up with a really good idea on how to make it work, and it was using the push notification to send automatic monthly reminders to keep you top of mind. Like, that was early in the game. I think we built something like 2,000-3,000 some odd apps. So when I got into that space, I got a RFP request about building exactly what you're talking about. Was taking it to that next level of, hey, how can we use this to, pull in schematics for, so your technicians can be in the field and use this. I'm talking, this is probably like 2012, maybe 13.
Well, that's crazy, because it's still not there, like not where it could be. Well, it could be like next level right now.
Well, it was a completely out of my wheelhouse. Naturally, though, I'm like, I can figure this out. Like, I'm going to get this thing squared away. So I started trying to find a partner, like an app development company that was far beyond us, because it was going to take a lot of bodies and a lot of time to accomplish it. And it's really hard to give an RFP when you have no idea what the hell you're getting yourself into. So it was going to have to be one of those agile deals where it's ongoing. You build it, you add, you build it, you add, you fix. But I ended up passing on the deal because it was way out of scope for me. And it's and I've seen like different variations of these roll out and different, and people will still come and ask me if we're building apps, and we don't anymore. But they'll ask me, people come to me and say, I got this great idea about this. I'm like, it already exists and people are working on it. Like, you got to know what you're getting into. It would, and I actually thought that the virtual reality side of this thing was going to somehow play into this like space too. I don't necessarily know where it's going. I've seen some cool stuff, some stuff that like I'm not like super impressed by, but like I think there's something there. I don't know what it is, but I wonder if this stuff's all coming from trying to solve the same problem.
Yeah, it is, and it's. I think what it ultimately stems back to is technician shortages and managing people in general.
Efficiency,
and so for me, I cannot afford to lose a technician or a service expert because they're at a supply house and they get poached.
Yep.
That's one thing. That's a big thing. We have a very strong culture. We actually give the guys a gift card every time they come to us with where another company has come to poach them, and they've said no. We're like, hey, here you go. Here's a gift card. Yeah, and so I mean, we have a really cool culture like with that type of stuff. But
and then you say, give me the name and the number of this person that poached you.
Oh, I do.
I have no doubt.
I do, because one day they'll work for me. And so it's cool. I mean, it's all in, and I get it. Like we get at least 5, usually closer to 10 applications a week organically for service experts that are in different areas, and just trying to get come to our team, join our team and stuff. But I mean, we do things really different. Like, we do things very different than most people.
Culturally or operationally?
Everything. So I took all the seats out of all the vans and put beanbags in for the guys because we're all millennials. So no, I'm kidding.
Weird. Have you been to this office?
I completely bought that. Like, we do that.
And we have foosball tables that slide out the back of the vans. So like when they're bored, well, no, it's legitimately, like, we buy all their tools. We provide all tools for all the guys. All their training, like we send our entire team to New Jersey constantly, several times a year. I'll be there in 2 weeks again.
Paul will be there.
Oh, will you?
I'll see you there.
Cool. I'll be there. And so we do that a lot. Their vans, and I got this one from Larry. If after 10 years of being with us, their vans are theirs. Like, personally, we give it to them. And so, not that anybody wants to like rock around the
Paul does
van or work van. So
all day, sliding doors.
Yeah. Well, yours is probably a little less creepy than ours because ours have the windows in them. So, like, slide
You'd
over
be surprised,
and then like the kids jump out or somebody jumps out. And you're like, I don't think that's legal, but whatever. But it's just little stuff like that. I mean, the Savanah Bananas is a minor league baseball team here in town. Our guys get tickets to the air conditioned section of that whenever they want game, and it's just stuff like, everybody does little things for their team, but we really try to do it above and beyond. Birthdays off, paid. So the problem is I've had this conversation before, and there's so much that we do that nobody else does that I forget that we do it. And then whenever they come on board, they're like, what the hell? Like, why y'all do this? Why are y'all doing that? Like, why are y'all giving this away? And so,
but
we wouldn't be able to do that stuff if we didn't watch the numbers too.
Yeah, sure. So it's still a strategic move. So, which makes perfect sense. You have to do that.
We bought into the virtual reality stuff too. So we got a lot of green guys we had one guy that was a diesel mechanic, and then within a month he was able to catch maintenance calls. So
cool.
And,
that's what's so cool about the virtual reality stuff. I've had the opportunity to look at it, and obviously I don't know shit about working on air conditioners or furnaces, but I've been able to at least tinker around with those things, and it is pretty damn cool. Like, it's pretty neat. And I thought at one point about, maybe potentially investing into something like that with somebody, or just me maybe helping with capital or something like that, but because I was intrigued by it. But it is cool, man. Like, I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely growing. It needs some growing to do. I interviewed Doug, the founder and CEO of Interplay, last week or week before last. Really, really great people, and they really are interested in improving the program. And so like 3 years ago, they said it would take like a month to 2 months for a program to be like just started. And it would take like 6 months to a year to actually create the whole course. Now they're pumping out the whole course in a month. So like they're bringing on more trades and everything. So it's a really cool concept. And it's like anything else. It's just growing super fast.
Paul, you had something I could tell. You're itching to say something.
Yeah. So you've got me thinking, this whole like micro distribution thing you brought up earlier has me thinking about the future of contracting and just the future of the industry. It's not new that a consumer can buy a part online and then call around and have someone install it. That's not new. And either is the response of contractors, or like, well, we're not going to warranty the part. But the reality is, like, those worlds are colliding, e-commerce and what we do, right? What's your stance on that? Not necessarily your stance, but what's your perspective or thoughts around that world, how to be prepared for it when it comes?
If somebody's purchased a part online, call me. My number is 912. I have no problem at all. And so there's a program called My Easy Install. Chris Rush, he developed it. He's partnered with these websites to provide a legitimate licensed, bonded, insured contractor to install the equipment that they're buying off of these websites. And he's letting them know, look, this isn't going to be a $500 job. Like, you're going to pay $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 for labor. Like that's, so he coaches people to take the margins you were going to make off the products, put it into the labor. Like now it's like, okay, and the miscellaneous materials and that type of stuff. And so there's a lot of stuff that people don't take into consideration. Did they even size it properly? Is the old system the right size for the house? Like, was it sized properly when it was installed? So those things are taken into consideration. And I'm right there with them. Now we're partnered up with warranty companies too. So I'll give you a 10-year labor warranty and get you a 10-year parts warranty on a product that you purchased from somebody else, and I'll still make hella profit on it.
So I want to ask.
Got it.
I want to ask this quick question too, because I don't want to skip it, and we're kind of starting to segue into something else. But we've talked about all the unicorns and rainbows of the business. Like, what's some of the cons you've had to come across? And it could be something that's you've taken and turned back into something good. But let's talk about like you're like shit. Like this is something I got to figure out. Like, so share some of those too.
Yeah, totally. So accountability and culture.
Yeah.
You don't have the office. You don't have the guys in the office every single morning, sitting around the table, filling out the invoices from yesterday, shooting the breeze, creating that camaraderie. So you have to be very intentional. We have a monthly breakfast where we all come and hang out, and I pay everybody for like 2 hours to come and basically build that camaraderie. That's something that I just have to bite the bullet and pay for the breakfast, which is always hundreds of dollars, and then pay the payroll for everybody to not be making money, lose the revenue from them not working, and it's just an intentional, side of things. That's the biggest thing. But we do Zoom all the time. Like we have every Thursday morning at 8 a.m. we Zoom, and so we're the guys. I mean, we all see each other constantly. We all communicate constantly. It's just a different way of communicating. And so, like millennials, we all got the bad rap of not wanting to be on the phone anyways, not wanting to hang out with anybody anyways. Like we want to be on our cell phones. So, like we just like kind of took it and ran with it. We use Slack and we communicate with Slack, that the communications program and or app. And so we're able to track stuff, and so it has different channels, and we're able to track whether it's a marketing question, install question, whatever. And so that's all. We've kind of overcome those challenges, but that's the same challenge that anybody that I talk to about it, they're like, how do you build camaraderie? Like, how do you know that so-and-so's family's having issues? We talk constantly. You have to be intentional in talking and communicating through Slack, and it's easy to overlook things too. Whenever they're only on Slack or something like that, it's easy to scroll past something that's like, oop, we missed something. We should have really dove into that. But
right,
kind of being intentional with that. And then my wife, she's always really big on checks and balances, and just watching and making sure that. And another thing is like we have the red, yellow, green. And so like after a few minutes of being on a service call, like if it's been 30 minutes or an hour and there's no check-in happening, she's on the ball, like sending the little emojis that's like red, the red light emoji, red, green, yellow. And she wants the technicians or the service experts to check back in, and they'll reply with whatever color they are. And if they're yellow, like I'm getting on the phone, like, hey, what's up, buddy? Like, what's going on? If they're red, it's like, I'm on my way to you. Like, what's going on? Like, because they're red, that means they're ready to punch somebody in the throat. And so it's time to go help them out.
Yeah, which is kind of like your 5-3-1 deal, just on the use it a different way.
Yeah, it's just the reverse aspect of it. We're trying to pull information from those guys, that team. Yeah.
So I figured out the gate, like culture would be one, because culture. But I mean, listen, like culture is since you consume Gary Vee's content, and Gary Vee's a partner of ours, the largest part of their company is their HR department, because they're a people company. And culture here is something when we go back and we have people come in and just kind of consult with our employees to always find out like what's good, what's bad. You always do this thing called right, wrong, missing, confusing to understand like where we're at, what needs to change. Our culture is very solid here. We're super tight. We're very close. We once a month we always go and serve somewhere in the community, and you know how that goes. Like we're covering all those salaries, of people to go and serve, and so. But we do it because if they want to fight for each other, they continue to fight for our customers to keep us at the top of our game, right? And so you got to pour into these guys so they'll let you know that they care, because that comes full circle. So those are things that you have to do. So I was wondering how remote, like the cultural aspect of it works. But you're right, like with Zoom, which is, you know, like a software like we're using now that you'll see on our YouTube channel, is you can still see everybody. And so when they talk, you get that face-to-face interaction. No, it's not the same as you physically being together, because the energy is a little bit harder to feed off of, but you're seeing each other and you're talking, and then you get to meet once a month. So I don't think it's as far out there as it may have used to have been, because you have some of this new technology. The flip side of this too is culture gets difficult even when you are together. So
yeah, sure.
So, you know, if you figure out the processes that work beyond just like, you know, like gift cards here and there is cool, but you also gotta, I think the answer is if you genuinely care.
Yeah.
I'm not talking fake that shit. Like if you genuinely care, that comes across to people. You know, the simplest things can go super far in letting them know that that you care about them, which then keeps your team tight. So I want to, just for the sake of time too, I want to get into this last piece of it as well. I'm going to shift gears for a second and talk about your podcast, because what's that?
I said go.
Okay, cool.
Go ahead.
Sweet. So, I want to just say thank you, because when we were considering, you know, finally moving this podcast forward, I reached out to you for a lot of help. And you graciously were like responding to my texts and my messages and all that stuff, and trying to give me advice, because you've been doing this since 2017 for the trades as well. So, and I've listened to so many of your podcasts, and they always have such good feedback. And part of it was like a motivator for me to just like, you know, if I was having the same conversation, I can't remember if it was with James Orsini from Gary's Vaynerchuk's old CEO or who it was, but I was talking about how, it was Ken Goodrich from Gettle. That's who it was. Okay. So I was talking to him about how I've had all these conversations with various sizes of home services companies over the past, you know, decade. And I wished I could share some of these, backroom conversations I've had, because so much good shit comes out of those conversations. Like they're dropping bomb after bomb. And I'm like trying to take mental notes, but my ADHD kicks in. So I can't remember shit except that I had a good time. But I wanted to offer up the same thing, you know, but listen, I've given hundreds of keynotes and breakouts and things like that through the years. And I thought, man, if I could, I always feel so good afterwards, because when I'm done, I get bombarded, or my team gets bombarded with questions and things, and people take it away. And like you said, the unfortunate part is you can talk about all this stuff. And I always talk about my 95.5 rule, which will be a podcast episode at some point. And that is 95% of people won't do shit with what you just told them. The 5% will, and those are the ones who typically succeed. But you have to, I think what has to happen in our world is you have to give back at some level, and you have to use the gifts that you've been given and the platforms you've been given. And I had this opportunity to do this. I mean, I partnered with Gary Vaynerchuk, who has a killer podcast. Yep. So they also were super helpful in getting us to put this thing together. But I wanted to share all these backroom stories and the responses I got from all the keynotes to the masses. Because as an internet marketing company for the trades, we can't work with everybody. We have a limited volume of people that we can work with, and that's it. So it kind of, restricted us. Whereas this was a platform where we could start to share all that knowledge universally. And I really leaned on you, man, and you were there for me, and I appreciate that, and I'll never forget that. But a lot of it, too, was like listening to you, man. Like, so the Service Business Mastery podcast is one that you can download. He's got like 15,000 episodes or something like that, like 400 or 500, somewhere around there. Yeah. But all these awesome topics. And so I think that, and you're part of a couple of different groups, because you just came back from Orlando at the AHR Expo. And I thought it was really cool and indicative of where things are going, because they actually had like a podcast set up. So they had, multiple podcasters that were there from the trades doing live podcasts. I thought that was pretty cool. So how did you, what made you decide to go down this path? Like mine was to share all this information to serve others. It's a servant mentality type of approach. What made you start Service Business Mastery?
So it was pretty much the exact same thing. A friend of mine, Brian Orr, he has the HVAC School podcast, and is really focused on service experts, service technicians, and diving really deep into the technical aspect. And basically, he started his podcast because he was creating training podcast episodes for his team, for his company, and then it kind of just spun out of control to where like people from other companies were like, hey, I want to, I want that, and I want to learn that. And so he started getting a lot more downloads. And then some business owners started doing it, and he didn't want to go into the business side of things. So he had me come on as a guest of his show, and we did like 3 or 4 episodes. And then we talked afterwards, and it was like, I said, if you ever wanted to do a business podcast, like you do all the work and I'll just talk, then I'll do it. And he was like, well, how about this? Well, I'll help you get started, and let's do a podcast together. And so he helped me get started, told me what equipment to buy, basically exactly like I did to you. And he said, this is what I use. This is the stuff that's good. You don't really need this to start off with. Don't spend the money on this until you know you're going to do it. Average podcast lasts 7 episodes. We know that, like as podcasters, after 7 episodes, it's hard to find content. And so he was like, record 7, release those, just trickle those out, and then just, as those are trickling out, keep getting content. And, it was traction at first, like the first 10 episodes was perfect. It was great. And it was just like you said, it was me giving back to the community, me giving back to the industry that was giving me so much. There are podcasters out there that generate a lot of money as far as what they get paid every month in sponsorships. And one of the commitments that I made was that I will not have a sponsor on the podcast unless I have used their product for 6 months and I'm allowed to give negative feedback to them about them. Like if something bad happens, I'm allowed to say this happened. I'm not going to do anything like any slander or anything like that, but I can't sugarcoat everything. And so that has restricted me from sponsors. And so it was like, okay, fine, I'll do this on my own. And so I really had to create a schedule personally to where like it got to where like I was the day before I was supposed to release, I was trying to find content because I was trying to build the company so much so. But now for the past 2 years now, it's been every Monday and Friday I work on my business, not in it. And then every Tuesday and Thursday I network. If networking is available, I network on those days. Wednesdays are podcast only. And what it does is it allows me to say no to everything else. So with that, now it's very intentional. And so now that we're ranked, we're in the top 100 we're in the top 25 of business podcasts. And we're in the top 120 for entrepreneurial podcasts. And so now we have booking agencies. I have 47 episodes that are recorded, edited, ready for release, but I only release 1 a week. So, and I think we're at like 437 episodes or something like that. So now I have a huge backlog. So I'm gonna have to start releasing like 2 or 3 a week just to get rid of the backlog. And my interview calendar is booked out until the end of May. So, and it's 4 recordings every day, every Wednesday. So like eventually it's going to catch up where I'm like, I got way too much content, but they're all really freaking interesting people. So it's like, for me to say, no, I don't want to interview you. I'm like, dang. And then like Mike McAllowitz has been on several times, and then I've been in his book. I'm in his book now, the book that's getting ready to be released. So he comes on and he's like, hey, I need this episode released on this day. And I'm like, well, somebody's getting booted out of the way because your episode's getting released when you want it to be released. And so it's like catch-22. And then you develop really awesome relationships with people. And so now it's almost like a disease where it's like, that's what I really like doing. And like the team at AHR Expo last year, I went and recorded live, but just walking around with a dash cam DR40 and horrible background noise. Like it took me hours to edit it all out. And Nicole was like, man, I appreciate you. That's the girl from AHR. She's like, I appreciate all the work and effort you put into this. Like, next year, we're going to create some pavilions for the podcasters. And I was like, all right, sweet. And then she said, well, sign up for the days. And I was like, you just stick me whenever there's available time slots, whenever nobody else wants to sign up. And then I kid you not, I legitimately would get there at 7:30 every single morning and then leave at 6 o'clock every night. And I only went into the AHR Expo twice. The rest of the times I was recording. And so it was just wild. And it was really cool because I got to meet a lot of awesome people. And then the CEO of Fieldpiece, all these people were coming to the podcast pavilion to meet me and to be on the podcast, which is like, what? Like,
yeah, it's so cool.
I'm just a South Georgia boy that doesn't like, I'm nobody, and y'all are coming to hang out with me. That's cool.
I'm gonna be honest. I was slightly jealous.
That FOMO.
Oh man, FOMO for sure. I hate missing out on anything, but I'm also, I'm such at the beginning of the game that I'm like, next year, motherfuckers, I'm there. Like, let's go. I'm in.
Well, I got you. If you want to be there. And then we got ACA that's coming at the end of next month, so we'll be there too.
That's so cool. Maybe I can squeeze into that one.
Yeah.
Tersh, so I listened to how you plan your weeks out, and you have a lot of intentionality. I got your email back today that said, hey, I only check my email twice a day. Like, you are obviously a student of personal development, time management. Who are some of these resources? What are you reading? Who are you listening to? Like, who's helping you frame your professional life?
Ari Mizell. Have you heard of Ari Mizell? He has.
I have not.
He has the book called Replaceable Founder. So basically, how can you replace yourself as the founder? And it's tons of automation tools. I don't know if people realize or not, but we post about 200 times a week, and it comes from about 1 hour on a Sunday. And so I'll spend about an hour to 2 hours on a Sunday creating content, editing content, reading content that I want to share. And then I use Zapier, and that shit just flies. And so I got about 200-ish posts every week. And people are like, man, you're posting while you're sitting here talking. How rude is that? I was like, what did I post? Like, I don't have a clue what I posted. Like, the biggest thing with that is you have to make sure you're replying to people because it's posting so often that they would say, I commented on your post, but you didn't reply. Like,
yeah, then you sound like an asshole. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, listen, man, I know you gave me a ton of time, and I appreciate that. And I want to be aware of your time because I know you're a metrics dude, man, and you're driving to different hours and times and things like that. So I had a couple more questions, but I guess we're just going to have to be continued some of this stuff. But I just want to say to you, brother, man, I like you went out of your way to be helpful to us to help get this thing launched. We've seen some really good early success with the podcast, and man, I'll tell you what, it feels so good when I get emails or text messages or Facebook messages or Instagram messages from people saying, hey, I heard this and it did this. I had somebody send me a message yesterday that they listened to our interview with Jens Pulver, who was the first lightweight champion in UFC, talking about his story of overcoming adversity and domestic violence and things like that, and saying that it was making her cry. And then she got some, some advice from it. And like, that's why we do it, right? Like it's no different than at Rhino when I get a customer that says, hey, you guys helped grow us 1.8 million this year. Like, there's no better feeling than getting a testimonial because that's what you're doing it for. Our motto at Rhino is we exist to grow your business, period, because that's it. That's the only reason I have a company. There's 90 plus people here is on this team is to grow our customers' business. Well, this podcasts are no different. And you were very influential on that for us in the start of this podcast. And I want to make sure that's super clear, brother.
I appreciate it, bud.
Yep.
Anytime I can help anybody, I'm more than happy to help.
So again, quick plug on Tersh's podcast because it's ridiculous. And if there's any topic you can think of, he's probably already covered it. So it's Service Business Mastery. I did know she just switched up the graphics a little bit on there. But you got to go download it. There's he's got 400 some odd in there. So I guarantee if you subscribe to his and you go back through it, you'll find something you want to listen to. I've listened to a ton of them on plane rides. So I appreciate your brother. You've done a fantastic thing with this remote methodology of running the business. Clearly it's successful and it works. So hopefully the listeners got to take some good stuff away from this. I know they will if they listen to it in its entirety, but like we talked about, you got to do something with it. So ambition without action is useless. I always like to throw that in there. So again, appreciate your brother. Paul, do you want to say goodbye to our boy Tersh?
I want to say goodbye, but I also want to mention I don't like carrying debt. I don't like debt at all. And I owe you breakfast. I offered once to chip in for breakfast for it was either your team or maybe the Rotary. and that date came and went. So I'm on the East Coast. I would love to come down to Savannah. I'll bring the fam, my kids, your kids. Let's do some brunch.
All right, buddy. Sounds like a plan.
Just make sure you get the top filet mignon, top shelf. Just make sure you go all out. But, Paul, do not use your Rhino card. You hear me? All right, everybody.
Yep, deal.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening again. And again, we're so grateful to have Tersh Blissett on this podcast. Make sure you check out his podcast because he drops bomb after bomb in them. We appreciate you, and we will see you on the next episode of To The Point. Peace.
Thank you for listening to The Point. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please consider leaving us a review in the App Store. And don't forget to share with your friends. Till next time, kick some ass.